Thank you, David. We were talking about Janet Cuppers before in some of her magazines. Coincidentally, in a current CC and D Eye to Eye, I'm going to read one of the poems in there that I wrote, and and then two others, and hopefully they're all different. This is a subtle cruelty. Gail Buckley, the widow of my oldest friend, Vietnam correspondent, editor, and author Kevin Buckley, is a gifted writer in her own right. While reading her earliest book, The Horns and American Family, a passage caused me to close the book and exclaim for the first time while reading a well-known expletive. Gail recounts being in Hollywood as a young girl while her mother, the incomparable Lena Horne, was making a movie. And to keep her occupied, Lena took it to the nearest Girl Scout troop. Lena was told that Gail might be more comfortable in a troop in a more distant and poor Black neighborhood. Lena was having none of it and was told, well, she is light-skinned and it may be all right for her to join here. I slammed the book with a howl. The fucking Girl Scouts. I always thought of the Scouts, boy and girl, as the teachers of American values. Yet here was a whole other aspect of racial bigotry that I had not seen. I knew the horrors of slavery, the terror of the KKK and lynchings. I had seen the exclusion of American soldiers from bars in Oklahoma. I had hired Black professionals over the objections of superiors in a Wall Street firm, but I had never seen cruelty to a child from a supposed American institution. These people did not mean to be mean, they just were. It was a cruelty that was woven deeply into the fabric of our society. In the many years since the incident, much has improved, but Charlottesville and many other news stories, like Buffalo, have shown us that some do not consider racism to be un-American. Thank you, Gail, for this education and for many other things. Then I have a footnote down at the bottom that says, in one of the many coincidences we all see around us, General Colin Powell, who wrote a blurb for the back cover of Gail's terrific book, American Patriots, was laid to rest the same day that Kevin died. Kevin was, as I said, was my oldest friend. Okay, this one is a little different. It's called Healthcare. When I was young, I had a doctor, Big Joe McDonald. He treated my colds, took my tonsils out, diagnosed my bronchitis. In short, he was my one and only doctor. Now a bit older, I was a contemporary of Adam's. The beautiful Eve was charming, but Adam was a bit of a pain in the ass. I have a cardiologist, ophthalmologist, orthopedist, neurologist, podiatrist, pulmonologist, urologist, and a primary care physician. And instead of Big Joe just taking my temperature, listening to my chest, feeling my stomach, I know I've had x-rays, EKGs, EEGs, MRIs, CT scans, cystoscopies, urine analysis, and more blood taken from me than I knew I had. I had a great primary physician for 35 years, but he retired. I really miss him and Big Joe. I guess I'm better off for all these new specialist devices, procedures. Hell, I'm alive and Adam isn't. And then I'll wrap up with one that's a tad longer, and I hope that people will comment not only on my poetry, but they could send me things that I have to do with the logic of it. It's called Vietnam Fracture. People often ask what started this terrible polarization in which we find ourselves. I feel it all began with the Vietnam War, which created two polar extremes and a confused middle. We had the extreme patriots who believed that everything we were doing was God's will, no matter what lies the policy was built on, a policy that was flawed to begin with. We should have learned all the way back to revolution that in a two-country war with the combatants separated by oceans, the home team always wins. And I thought that those, and they thought that those opposed to the war were commies and traitors. And the extreme anti-militarists who took out the hatred of the war on returning vets who had no more to do with the flawed policy than Pinhead or Houdini, calling them baby killers, criminals, etc. And even worse, in my judgment, caused an end to the drafts. We should not have ended it. We should have expanded it, added women, added non-military options, hospital workers, Peace Corps, Indian reservations. Keeping it would have continued the we all owe our fellow Americans something. Taking it away allowed the we to become I. I did 6 months of military service and generally hated it. But even without realizing it, I grew because of it. From day one, the service built teamwork. The first time in Fort Dix, we marched along a bunch of ragtags cheering, "Mighty A, proud rifles." We were all in together. And from then on, I became part of we. The Irish Catholic from New York City worked with the Protestant from Alabama who thought the Pope was a heretic. The college English major found common ground with high school dropouts who thought that reading was a big waste of time. The local basketball gym rat fanatic found the same teamwork as part of an artillery crew. The kid from the lily white neighborhood of Inwood saw his black platoon buddies stop in bigotry and exclusion in Lawton, Oklahoma. And we all became we, the American we. There is no more we for most of us other than the military, police, and fire services. The rest of us have all fallen back into our own little tribes and gotten us into the mess we're in now. Once the polarization grew, civility was lost. No more Ronald Reagan and Chip O'Neill having drinks after disagreeing all day. William F. Buckley and John Kenneth Galbraith, who agreed on nothing about economics, sailing together. People lost the ability to separate policy from personality, to disagree without being disagreeable. If someone doesn't agree with you, she is probably a fascist or communist or un-American or bigot or moron or soft on crime. Can we get out of this mess and return to the World War II mentality that we're all in this together? I have no idea. Probably not in my or your lifetime, or not of this poem. Thank you for putting up with my ranting.